Welcome to the Energy Fix podcast, Christina. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Tansy. I'm really excited to be here.
We were talking off air before we hit record, and we have so much in common, and we have so much of the same thought process in the passions that we're going to talk about today. I really can't wait to get into this conversation. I feel like it's going to be a pretty deep, passionate, explosive kind of conversation.
Welcome to my world, Tansy.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we really get into it all, let's talk about you and where you're at right now. You have had an incredible shift. You have had so many things that you've been working through, some traumas, some obstacles, some big stuff. And so I'm really curious where you're at now. Is there a word or a phrase that you're really embodying at this point in your life?
Yeah, I think a great word to describe where I'm at is rebellion. There's just, I wake up every day, I look at the status of what's going on and the news, the messaging, and I'm just like, wow, like you really have to get a handle on what's going on and stake your claim in the world and find your balance and find your truth and exist in that truth to support your mental health.
Yeah. And so I'm really curious then, because there is a lot that can cause the rebellious side to either be empowered or it can cause the rebellious side to be disempowered and just angry. And so I would love to know how you are embracing that and moving more towards the empowered side so that it can be, your expression can be in a healthier, more productive way.
Yeah, well, I think the foundation of that is I have made some extremely valuable community connections and them in the oddest ways through like signal groups and other groups, electronic groups where you don't actually have people that live near you, but it's people who you connect with. And I actually just found out yesterday there's like 5 people in my group that live near me, and we're gonna have like a real life meeting soon. But um, finding those connections is super important and having gratitude, like even in the chaos, taking the moment every day to reflect on your daily and then looking at the small wins and the big wins and even the things that are trials and tribulations are also teachers and the difficult people are teachers. So, and every patient that I encounter is a teacher. And so, what I've been doing since so my journey, this book was born out of the pandemic. So since the beginning, which I was following it closely, I've like gone through different career path changes. I was living abroad at the time in the Netherlands, so I was actually working in the hospital during the pandemic, and I had a yoga business, yoga paddleboard business, which actually thrived during COVID because people could go outside and play. But since then, I was working for a nonprofit for a while that had COVID treatment protocols, other sorts of treatment protocols for COVID-related issues and immune dysfunction. And then I came out of that and like kind of explored marketing and branding with a business partner that I met through the nonprofit. So we were doing that full time for about a year, but we both had our side projects, and her side project started taking off. And then I decided to start kind of exploring taking over the book more. And so the book was then finalized, and my coaching business was born. So all these different paths have taken all of that frustration and anger from mainstream medicine, lying to people, and also the wellness industry not necessarily being transparent about their intentions all the time, and turn it into basically a patient counseling, coaching service, and in a sort of an advocacy service. That the book is more, it is like a patient advocate book, actually. It's basically teaching, how to avoid stepping into landmines and how to actually become empowered with your own health.
Mm, I love that. And as we're going to really expand into traditional medical care system and the wellness industry and talking deep about that and the trials and tribulations that you have had to bring you to where you're at now. I want to start off with the book since you mentioned that right off the bat. The name of your book is called Get Healthy or Get Dead,
Yeah.
which, let's be honest, it's not exactly whispering wellness. Yeah, it's It is more like this bold slap in the face that we probably all really need. What what was the exact moment that this title came to you, and what truth are you really just done sugarcoating?
My business partner and I started doing this book together, and she is a communications and PR specialist and a journalist. And she and I brainstormed the title together, but our journey was together. So the moment the book title was born was like I had an inspiration from another coach, Asshole Consulting, Aaron Clary, and his brand voice is very like non-coddling, like in your face, like, shut up and let's go. And so when I was talking to Zara, I was like, I really am inspired by Aaron. I just want this book to be, I don't want it to be the typical wellness book where it's like woo woo and frou frou. I want it to be like, hey, like wake up and get your shit together and let's go. If you want to come on board on the truth train, let's go. I'll lead you on the path. You have to do the work though. And and I'll show you what the reality is of what's going on and the reality of why you're experiencing your inflammation issues. And let's work together to target it. So the title is like a choice. It's your choice. It's like I'm basically like putting the choice on the table for someone. Do you want to get healthy or do you want to go ahead on your path, with a downward spiral down to chronic illness? So that's kind of what was the inspiration behind it. And the color scheme and everything was like, when you walk in the bookstore and you see all the blues and the greens and the feel good stuff. Well, this is like it's like no, we're not your typical wellness book. We're here to like tell you the truth. You're gonna get a big dose of truth serum and let's get to work about it.
Yeah. And so as you started writing this book, what was that inspiration? Like what were you just done sugarcoating and done being soft about with the medical system or the wellness system?
Being in the medical system because my background is nurse anesthesia. And so it was so frustrating being in a situation trying to take care of people in a crisis and like knowing because I read research and I do the work learning about pathologies and inflammation. And so when I had the keys to the formula to actually cure people and get people out of the hospital, I'm bringing that information to colleagues and they're ignoring me and telling me that we don't do those things in our hospital, we don't follow those protocols, like that is when the anger and the frustration started. So it wasn't necessarily with the patients or people who aren't doing the work. It's more with the industry not being transparent about how to help lead people on the path of health. As I know that you talking before we got started, you have that same experience. Like when you're in the system, they're following the protocols dictated by the insurance systems and pharma. Pharma owns everything. Pharma owns the schools, the hospitals, the ads on TV. I mean, everything. And they will block you every single way along the way because if you get your messaging out, it affects their bottom line. They don't care about people. People are lab rats. They just want to perpetuate the sickness cycle so they can sell more drugs to treat the symptoms and not look at the underlying cause. And that is what just lit me on fire because it's just not morally and ethically it's wrong. As a healthcare provider, as a nurse, I made a vow to help patients and to heal people. I'm a healer. I'm not someone's doer to make their company grow. I'm here to help people find peace and balance in their life. That's what healers do. And so on the flip side of that, being involved in the medical freedom movement, and I'm not sure if you and the listeners are aware of that whole thing that happened during the pandemic. There was a group of us that stood up trying to basically push back, but finding out coming out the backside of that a lot of those people were either infiltrates or they had their own agenda fueled by ego and money, or they fell in and were bought out by pharma in disguise, whether it's in the form of other companies that are basically nutraceutical companies that pharma has bought out because that is happening. Pharma is coming in and buying out these companies. So you have to be very aware of what you're putting in your body, especially nutraceuticals. You have to look at the ingredients and make sure everything's clean and pure. So this book serves as like basically a starting point to help lead people in a cost-effective manner just to get them open, like get their eyes open and then help them become aware of where they may have an imbalance and then trying to address those issues. And then I'm here to offer support if people want it. If they want to go, get into a personal coaching session, I'll be all in to help treat and heal someone because that's what I love doing is helping people, find balance and happiness.
Yeah. Well, and I want to reiterate, you have been in this world for over 20 years. You've been in ICUs, trauma centers, COVID units, anesthesia. Like you've been in the game. And you said something that I think is really key. And I just want to go a little deeper. And you said this system is not designed to save us. You saw it with your own two eyes. So if that's the case, where do we even begin reclaiming our own power?
Shutting off social media and stop going to Dr. Google and Reddit is like my first recommendation. I know it's so hard to navigate all of the information overload that is coming through. You have to develop a truth meter and you have to do your own research. It's a lot of work and commitment to becoming someone who is aware and awake and who really values health. It takes energy to read food labels and to research what's in your products and to question what your healthcare providers, you know, prescribe to you because it may not actually be what is the thing that's going to treat the issue. I actually just spent probably 20 hours combing over old lab work and a patient history to help this poor girl who's vaccine injured, but she has like long-standing parasite infections that have gone untreated. She's had mold exposure. So she's her whole immune system is just dysregulated, including her gut. And she's been told like forever that, it's this or that. She's got like some masses on her ovaries. She's like a young woman. She's in her 30s. She's had a hysterectomy already. Like all of these things, like if they were addressed correctly in the first place, she probably could have avoided surgery and she wouldn't be where she is presently in this state of inflammation. So I'm grateful that she and I have crossed paths and it's been a pleasure to look through her case study, but like that is so gratifying to be able to actually, help people find like who've been suffering for years, like with stuff that's just because it's not meeting a protocol or because the medical schools are not teaching you what they want you to learn because they don't want you to think. They want you to be a protocol machine. They don't want you to look at the root cause of problems. It's gratifying when you are able to do that on your own and devote the time to the patients. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And as we were talking prior to hitting record, I was telling you that I totally understand. And I've been there too. I've seen so much that it is really disheartening when you know at the depth of your soul, because not only have you experienced it, but you've also helped people experience the the level of root cause healing,
Yeah.
the and how it can literally shift somebody's life, but then know that you're stuck in a system that doesn't support that.
Yeah.
Christina, what do you wish or what do you think most people don't understand about their own health until it's just too late?
It's just we are so overloaded with stimulation all the time. And, over the years since the birth of the internet and cell phones, there's been a constant decline of overstimulation, of contaminants, of, you know, you have big food, you have big ag, you have big pharma, and then you have the government and defense entities that all work together. And it's not just a US issue, it is a worldwide issue. All these combinations together confuse people. And so they think they're doing the right thing. They think they're eating healthy. Like the lies with cholesterol and fat for years, like has been, and it's hard to try to reprogram people. I'm looking at your face. I know you know what I'm talking about. I'm so tired of people talking about fat being bad and high fat and high cholesterol. I'm like, no, it's not that. Like cholesterol inflamed is a symptom of your body saying, hey, like we're inflamed, please address the underlying issue. It's not because you're eating bacon. It's because of a whole other pathology that's causing your cholesterol to be raised up. But not, I'm going off on a tangent as an example, but what I'm trying to basically frame here is that, greenwashing of products, probiotic gummies or probiotic yogurt bites or whatever. Like I saw that 2 days ago. I'm like, y'all, this has like 15 ingredients in it. This is not healthy. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, no, don't eat it. Go grab a piece of cantaloupe instead or go, whatever. But it's just people need a complete re-education on what health is and finding balance again and setting boundaries. Like the people that I know who are still leading the fight on all this and are trying to make political changes, like they're such yes pleasers, yes to this, yes to that, and they always put themselves in last place. And then they start experiencing symptoms of burnout. It's just like, here's your problem. Like you can't do everything. You have to be realistic about your goals and, set your like schedule things, schedule time in to unwind or to meditate or to do breath work or to get outside and play. And I know it's hard when people have 9 to 5s. Like I get it. I've done it. I've worked multiple jobs at once. So believe me, I do understand. I'm not living in some fanciful world because I am a business owner. I'm not, in a 9 to 5 anymore, but I do understand it's hard, but there are tricks and tips to be able to navigate that as well, especially when I was a nurse working shifts. I mean, I managed to actually eat healthy during work and, prioritize sleep as well. So it's just reprogramming people basically.
Yeah. When I was in nutritional school, and because the nutritional school that I went to was all about root cause healing and ancestral nutrition and the functional cause. And when I was going through lessons and teaching and learning, I remember there were points where I'm like, yeah, this is going to be really challenging to get this through to some people. It's
Yeah.
really challenging because there's been this narrative for so long, and it's so deeply ingrained in absolutely everything that we do, not just the messaging, not just the memories of what we were told, but also the advertising,
Mhm.
the cultural influence that it's had. Like, there's just so much conditioning.
Yeah, very much so. It's and literally what you just said is conditioning. It is basically I don't want to say Pavlovian because it's not necessarily Pavlovian, but the world has been basically the recipients of a psychological experiment on several levels over different things. And there's been brainwashing, and that is honestly a real fact. And it goes so complex. Like I could really go down a rabbit hole here, but I don't want to freak out your audience. But like we're at an information war. It's a new level of fighting, and this is probably the most impactful way to cause destruction and chaos and to conquer people and enslave people into sort of like a drone mindset where you don't care to do the research, where you're just like, where you accept everything. It's like you just accept being obese or accept being tired. It's part of aging. Oh, yes, my mom was like this and her mom was like that. And it's normal to be tired when you're 50 and feel burned out. It's just menopause. Don't worry about it. You'll get over it. It's like, no, you don't have to live that way. Like I'm 50 and I'm the healthiest I've ever been, because I routinely check my biomarkers. I don't want to go into that death trap of a hospital and have them try to take me out. Like I'm not going down anyway. They don't want me as a patient, but I'm just saying, like, I am staying out of that place. And they better watch out if that someone hires me in to be an advocate for them. They better watch out. I'm going in with guns ablazing and they'll be sorry. Not the patient, the hospital. The hospital, the patient will love me.
Well, you talked earlier about the nervous system. And so I love that you integrate nervous system work, functional medicine, and movement, and you bring it all together. Why do you believe that the nervous system is that missing link in most healing journeys?
I love this question because I'm a big fan of mindfulness, especially my tool is sound healing. I work with bowls and tuning forks. I learned from Shanda Best. She is my teacher. She just left Key West. She was Namaste Key Yoga. She's transitioning into she's building a retreat in Andalusia, Alabama. But um the Western medicine overlooks energy healing and anything that has to do with like radiation or EMF exposure or all of that stuff causes disharmony in the body. Like and all of this noise, when you don't actually prioritize balancing and taking a moment out to do breathing, breath work, and just practicing some sort of mindfulness, it causes your body to just the frequencies are just disorganized and it causes stress, it causes disease. We're made of water, so our our cells are controlled by electrical impulses. So it's logical to me that frequency and vibration and like reducing vagal tone would just be the thing to create the other level of harmony in the body in addition to nourishing the body correctly and training the body correctly. It's when when you stop and you take moments to practice gratitude, then you slow down. Like having that spiritual component breaks you away from the rat race and helps you appreciate the gifts of daily life because that's what we're being divorced from the human aspect of living. You know what I mean? So having that spiritual component and addressing trauma work through using spiritual components and breath work, energy healing, frequency and vibration, that often helps break the cycle and breaks the disease and the inflammation. It's just one part, you know what I mean? You have to have it all working together to really create, I guess a revalidation that sticks, but it takes work to continue the progress. You have to have a growth mindset too. I have to offer that as well. If you aren't open to learning and experiencing and trying things out, you're going to be stuck in the same cycle of chaos.
Yeah. Well, so let's reference over to your book. What kind of things do you emphasize, teach, guide in the book to help with nervous system regulation?
So sleep is a huge component that I think it's a big piece that people miss, prioritizing sleep, getting all the distractions out of the bedroom, getting to bed at a certain time, waking up at a certain time, making sure that you have your circadian with or you nurture and nourish your circadian rhythm. So, prioritizing sleep is huge. So that's like one of the things, like if you don't get enough sleep, it'll cause you to be depressed or be anxious. It'll cause you to become an inflamed state. We repair when we sleep, like our muscles, our brain, everything. The spinal cord and the brain are bathed in fluid, and that fluid has elements in it to decrease the inflammation. The muscles revalidate and build while we sleep. You need certain amounts of the sleep cycle to be able to go and your body to um, find that balanced state in those different stages. Mindfulness, I know I just keep generally saying mindfulness, but there's different forms. It doesn't mean sitting on the floor and cross-legged and saying with your fingers in a mantra. It could be going out fishing or playing golf or going for a hike or doing anything that you love to do, getting out and watching the sunset or watching the sunrise, which also, by the way, is very important. Getting natural light at the right times in your body, it helps with the brain and inflammation. Um, Having a flexibility routine in your sport routine, when you're constantly going, and I'm going to take CrossFit for an example, although I have no issues with CrossFit, but I find that the program doesn't prioritize the correct balance and days off and then flexibility, unless you have maybe a CrossFit instructor that prioritizes that. They mention it a little bit in their teaching material, but they mainly focus on building muscle and getting lean. So it's important to rebalance the nervous system when you're having all those activities. And I'm trying to think also foods. when you're eating processed foods and you're eating sugar, that's going to hype up your nervous system again. I believe a lot of issues with ADHD, with autism, and other neurologic diseases such as Parkinson and Alzheimer's, there's a huge nutrition component in those. A lot of it is vitamin D deficiency. People probably get sick of me talking about vitamin C, but vitamin C is so vital for everything. I love Dr. Thomas Levy. He is amazing. He's written many books on it, and he's been such a mentor to me. So I've learned so much about the appropriate doses of vitamin C. And high dose vitamin C is like 25,000 milligrams. It's not even what we think might be high dose. So having all your nutrients in order is another way to make sure that your nervous system is in balance.
Yeah. Well, let's dive even a little bit deeper into that. There's people with really serious trauma, military veterans, first responders, caregivers. Listen, people working in the hospitals during COVID time, right? Like there is massive trauma that is making it challenging for some people to get out of living in survival mode, which that is just really taxing the nervous system. What would you say to someone who feels like they're living in survival mode, or maybe they know they have some PTSD or some major trauma that they're trying to work through? And how can they start to shift and get away from just living and surviving into actually rebuilding their life?
Yeah, I love the military and vets are my passion population actually, and pilots. Pilots need a lot of help too. Um, so and I offer military discounts too with my services. I do want to mention that. But it's hard because PTSD is often the result of moral injury. So when you are doing something that you may not morally agree with, but maybe you've been programmed to do, it's part of the job, and you have a spiritual conflict and clash with it, or a victim of abuse, even, they don't have moral injury, but their body knows it wasn't right, so they suffer with the trauma from the abuse from the abuser. So those people have so many levels of issues, and it's overwhelming for them to even know where to begin. So it's important with people who do have trauma or PTSD to break things down and figure out what is the most important thing to tackle first and tackle it in stages. Because honestly, when you find out you have imbalance and you look at the root cause, you're like, oh my God, I have so much work to do. Where do I start? Even my book is like, I'm like, this might be overwhelming. And I broke up the book into different sections. Maybe skip a section and go to the one that speaks to you the most, and let's work on that first. That's what I would do with a client. Fundamentally, though, before even starting the psychological healing, getting the nutrition and sleep straight is priority in my professional opinion, because if you're putting junk in your body, it's just making the situation worse. And often, people who are suffering from trauma are in survival mode, so they're often trying to do so many things all at once, and so they may be going to get gas and running in there because they're hungry and getting some, processed snack or fried food from the gas station, and then grabbing an energy drink because they're tired, and they're like, oh, and then their sleep, they're getting maybe 4 hours of sleep a night, and their cortisol is out of whack, their hormones are out of whack. So, they're just like, oh, well, I don't, I don't know where to start. So I think it's also hard to lump people with trauma into one group because every person is different and their trauma is different, their level of trauma is different. So, like having the time to actually do a proper intake with someone and figuring out like where to begin is key. But for instance, I haven't had time lately this past year, but I was going on every Tuesday to a veterans golfing group where and community is important, by the way, for people who do have PTSD, to find others who are suffering in the same type of mental state, to be able to connect with people and talk about their trauma is important. But they would meet, and then we would golf together, and I would go and just literally offer a 3 minute nugget of health information. Like it was so basic as like hydration and vitamin D. Those were actually like two topics that I went over with them. Their wheels would actually turn on that. They would like, what about Gatorade? I'm like, no, no Gatorade. Let me give you a natural hydration drink that would be so much better, and they're like, oh, I'm getting what about this vitamin D? I'm like, no, it comes from CVS. It's got contaminants in it. We need to source you something better. Like, and what, by the way, what are you eating every day? Are you eating nutritious foods before you start supplementing with CVS vitamin D and grabbing your Gatorade? Like, let's talk about it. We like would start having the conversation over coffee and breakfast, then we would continue the conversation at the driving range. So, and that every group's different. You have to figure out, it's almost like doing marketing as well. You have to find your target audience and find the right language and communication style. It's the same with patients and with people with trauma. You have to figure out, how to relate to them to kind of break the cycle.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of relating, like you've had a lot of trauma that you worked through, especially with, why don't you just talk about it? Let's talk a little bit about some of the trauma that maybe you had to become more resilient with as you've worked through and got yourself healthier to get to where you're at now. Because I would love to know what your body has taught you about resilience. And what were some of those hardest lessons that you had to learn through in order to get on the other side, or at least to even get yourself moving in the right direction?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's probably going to be a long answer. So I'll try to keep it as short as I can. But as a healthcare worker in the system during the pandemic, and I know I keep referencing that, but that really has been a life-changing thing for me. And I knew the medical system was messed up before that, but like actually being in a unit, watching families being denied access to their sick and dying loved one, and then the hospital continuing to offer treatments that were making people sicker and not actually doing like full in services on updates on the science because they didn't want to, by the way. They didn't want to show what was actually healing people because it went against the remdesivir protocols and the intubation protocols. It was making the hospitals money. And the patients and the families were the expense of that, and the healthcare workers, our shifts, oh my gosh, like every place was different, but my experience was in the Netherlands, and my every hospital in the Netherlands also had different protocols with how they dealt with the COVID units. But you would go in, and have your shifts, and you would be covered in isolation gear for hours, like hours in hot, sweaty clothes, often in hot units, completely covered from head to toe, double gloved with plastic gloves, and those stupid non-rebreather masks, which in hindsight, when you look at the studies, which I knew anyway, but we had to follow the stupid hospital policies. After a certain period, after like 3 to 5 days after the inflammation process of the disease, when you actually go into cytokine storm, when people were dying and going into organ failure, you weren't contagious anymore. So all this bullshit with isolation gear, it was completely useless. Like we didn't have to be doing all that. And if we would have just been treating ourselves preventatively with repurposed drugs and natural remedies, we wouldn't even had to worry about getting sick. So, but that they didn't want us, they didn't want anyone to know that. They wanted to continue the sick cycle. So having to do that and witness people dying and suffering was incredibly disturbing on a mental health level. And at the beginning of all of this, my parents became ill with COVID, and I was already following, various news stories, and I became aware of a man named Pierre Corey, Dr. Pierre Corey, who had testified 3 times in the Senate over the use of steroids in treating COVID, using ivermectin to treat COVID, and then discussing repurposed drugs in general and the treatment protocols that his organization had put together, he and his colleagues had put together. And when my parents became sick, I utilized his data that he was using, which was coming from worldwide sources, where if you looked in various countries around the world, they were having success at treating COVID without having the high amounts of death. And so I ended up flying back to the United States and helping treat my parents. And we had to pull my dad out of the hospital because they were trying to kill him with remdesivir. And the people who were taking care of him, they actually went to church with my parents, and they're like, "Oh, don't worry, we're going to give him remdesivir the next day." And I found out after the fact that he was actually treating his family with ivermectin, and he knew better, but he was carrying out the bidding of the hospital and of pharma. I'm really pissed off still about that to this day. Like that's still traumatizing to me that he would even consider sacrificing the life of my parents over a hospital protocol. But that's the crux of the situation, which led to the I think all the trauma that all of us experienced. So that as a healthcare worker, and then just basically being ostracized when you knew better and no one else was willing to look at your data, like too lazy to look at. I mean lazy. Like I had basically a website with data, like meta-analysis of different repurposed drugs that were used to treat the virus, and they wouldn't even entertain it. They were basically brainwashed that everything was a lie and that the things that were being used were dangerous and that vitamin C doesn't work and vitamin D levels don't matter. And so it was that constant sort of atmosphere. Living and working in that every day will drive you absolutely nuts. And then on an interpersonal level, as you know, this whole thing was politicized, so it starts dividing people. That's the intention, was to divide and conquer. So you find that your friendships start dwindling away. You start finding who your real true support system is. And but it's traumatizing losing lifelong friends or losing people that you think that you have a deep connection with. And that didn't only happen once. That happened again when I found out that the nonprofit that I was working for was also compromised. And I learned the people that I thought were in the same game with me to go save humanity were actually not in it for the right reasons, and they started changing their mission and like learning those all those people were not actually your support system anymore, was like going through the pandemic all over again. So I don't know how you are, wherever you live, but I know it's isolating still. Like people are not aware of what happened over the last 5 years, and they've forgotten, and they think it's lies still because they're programmed with the media. So all of that is traumatizing. And then you factor in the moral injury from, that basically being forced to carry out protocols that you don't agree with. I mean, I couldn't. I left. I was done. I was like, y'all, good luck killing people. I'm out. I'm gonna go save people with my work through this nonprofit and go actually treat people who are suffering, with various chronic illnesses now, thanks to the pandemic response. So going through all of that and facing those uncomfortable, unpleasant feelings and thoughts, and actually crying and um, really going deep within, you really have to look at yourself and examine your decisions and what you did during that time period, and then just constantly being in a growth mindset and prioritizing, for me, prioritizing mindfulness, journaling, yoga, breath work. That's been a huge shifter. And during that time, I was doing intermittent fasting, learned it through my organization, and that was also life changing. That got me super healthy and lean. It has corrected what I didn't know was imbalanced. Because, I mean, obviously, when you're inflamed and not actually exercising and eating appropriately, you end up gaining weight. I think I was a size 10, bordering on a size 12 during the pandemic. I've been a size 10 my whole entire life. And I never really thought of myself as overweight. And I wasn't necessarily. I mean, I looked healthy enough, but after going through the journey and doing the fasting and learning more about functional medicine, I realized, wow, like this new lifestyle is much healthier, and my body just responded on its own. Like I don't gain weight anymore. Like for a period, I was having a problem keeping weight on because I race paddle boards competitively. That's one of my hobbies next to all this other stuff. I'm a little obsessed with surfing and paddleboarding and skateboarding, but those lifestyle changes really made me healthy and made me stronger, leaner, and my mind is stronger as well, and my faith in having a connection with a greater purpose. So I know that was a very long-winded answer to your
Mhm.
question.
No, it was perfect. It was perfect. I kept thinking this whole like, yes, everything that you just said, I think regardless of what side you're sitting on and what your thought processes are about what had happened, what transpired, where you were during that time and where you're at now or whatever, regardless of any of that, I feel like biggest the biggest issue that really came out of all of this was the division that it placed on us as a community to be able to stand together and to move forward with support, with healing, with keeping our nervous system regulated. Like the fact that you had to be in a state of pure anxiety and maybe guilt or shame or whatever emotion you were feeling because, maybe your best friend thinks the opposite of what you do. And now all of a sudden you don't have that support system anymore, right? Like there's just so much there that can get unpacked. I feel like that was that I, I have my own opinions. I feel like that hurting mentality of just getting people divided was so incredibly harmful for us as human beings and for our forward movement.
Well, this is a destruction of humanity. This is actual spiritual warfare. Whether you're Christian, Jewish, whatever you are, I don't really care what drives and moves you to believe into a bigger purpose. But this is literally the point of all of this was to divide and conquer and to isolate people and make people unhealthy. And this is just the start. It's coming again. It'll come in a different form. So let us all learn from this and realize to recognize the signs and signals when the next thing is coming. Because, and I don't want to sound like doom and gloom, but having the nervous system regulation and being aware of your body and of the messaging empowers you more and makes you stronger to be undefeated. Because I can't stress how important it is to be healthy, especially when there is this level of spiritual warfare. If you do not take care of yourself, you will take yourself out. I mean, the strongest warriors and soldiers will be the ones who commit to the internal work, to be the resilient ones to protect themselves and protect their communities and their families. Like, I don't know if we'll be able to change policy and procedure and change governments, but we sure can be effective in making sure that we don't destroy ourselves and the ones we love in our support systems. And as far as the people who don't agree and the people who are just completely lost, I mean, they know what happened now. It's all out there. They have shame and guilt and they probably feel foolish. I'm not out to say I told you so, and I know I will never get an apology for how I've been treated. And I'm okay with that. Like you just let it go and move on and worry about something more important than your ego. Their egos are also they're struggling with their own egos. So what we can do is a community now is to you know have a little compassion for each other and stop shutting down when someone's curious about you and like ask people questions and listen. And we've lost the art of conversation. I think my daughter, I have a 20-year-old, her generation is beginning to they see it and I think they're gonna maybe flip things around. Um, but being able to have a conversation where you don't always agree, it's okay not to agree, and it's okay to hear different viewpoints and be open to it and leave a conversation not being in agreement, but not hating each other. Like what? That's the stupidest thing in the whole entire world. Like it's completely anti-philosophical too. Like how can you solve anything if you don't hear different viewpoints? And how can you come together as a community if you don't hear where someone's coming from? So yes, like what you said was the point. It's the weapon, the isolation weapon. So in isolation and sickness were the weakest and easiest to control. I won't be going down. I'm fighting till the very end, so they can come after me and come take me. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I think more than ever, people are craving that connection again because of almost rebounding from what was before, But, you know, as you were talking, I started thinking to myself, I wonder is there any place in your book, any moments or passages in your book that you were really scared to publish, but you knew that you needed to say what needed to be said?
You know what? Like I really I wanted to expand more on the story behind my parents in the hospital, but I had to kind of censor that because they're worried about people where they live, saying something about that. I wanted to basically name every single person that tried to murder my father. And I really wanted to name person by person every single person in that nonprofit that turned, because I want to call them out on their cowardice. I couldn't really go into detail about what I saw, what I know, and all of the corruption that I know behind the medical freedom movement. I mean, there's bad stuff. I'm talking about the evilest of the evil in the realm of child sex trafficking connections. Like it's pretty bad. Like, and I'm not making this up. There's actual proof of that. Um, but like, saying things like that, being completely honest about those types of things. As far as other things mentioned in the book, I feel like that I was pretty much straightforward about what I feel like works and what doesn't work. I didn't spend any time talking about psychedelic therapy, which I think is important. It's not for everybody, but especially for trauma, it has its place as well. You have to be careful about talking about those types of things because you don't want to alienate your audience. So I would actually like to cover that more, but again, that's a delicate subject because that whole discussion is farmers watching that and they're going to try to get their evil claws into that and manipulate people through treatment programs and through those therapies. But there's definitely a use for plant medicine and healing, and that's why it's here on this earth, and that's why we are one, is to be one with nature and to utilize the tools that were made for us by a creator to find the balance that we need, but not rely on those things as the thing to heal you. Using those things as a tool to help with the work, but you have to do the foundational work within yourself, the meditation, the going within, the the discipline to get it done, to do the work yourself, to confront all of those hard feelings. Like people are afraid to cry and afraid to feel. Like that's what addiction is the fear to feel those feelings, whatever those feelings are. So it would be interesting to write another book just dedicated to that kind of thing. And maybe that will be one of my next books. I think my next book is going to be about dating in the post-COVID world and how much of a shit show that is. Because like you're talking about people not connecting. Well, let's talk about I can write a whole book about how those dating apps do that to people. So, but that is definitely another story and a great life example of how people are disconnected nowadays and can't communicate and bond.
Yeah, plant medicine is real. There's a lot of studies out there that are showing it is a very valuable tool for trauma, especially with PTSD, and especially if we're talking, veterans and military and
Yeah.
first responders. Lots of connection and research around that. Um, and I would just say at this point, for anybody who is interested in that, just
Yeah.
explore, do some Googling, do some looking, and just, decide for yourself if that's something that you find interesting. But I have seen much more that there's lots of research out there that is showing some great benefits and healing power.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's changed a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
Really, it's been interesting to hear people's stories after they go through like a treatment experience. So I definitely feel like it's an option for people. I want people to be aware of their options. People should know even drug therapy. People should be aware of their options, of the risk versus benefits, and then the patient, the client should have the right to decide what to do. And that's been my thing with this whole entire discussion with injections and therapies. Like, no one should ever be put into a position where they're mandated a therapy and not explain risk versus benefit. That is like, it's our right to choose what we put in our bodies, and we should be given all the facts. A healthcare provider should be doing their job and addressing those issues. And so that's been the kind of like the crux of this whole issue for me is the patient's not getting that. Like, and then whatever they decide is their choice. Like they want to have a therapy, then go get it. If that's what you think is the right thing for your body. I'm not going to judge you. It may not be what I necessarily decide for myself, but here's all the facts. And you be an adult and do what feels right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Christina, if somebody is inflamed, anxious, exhausted, feeling lost in a system that just doesn't really see them, what's maybe one or two things that somebody can start to do right now to be able to get them to move forward, to be seen, to feel better in their body, whatever you feel is the most important first steps, where would you start somebody out at?
God, that's such a hard question, but a good one. People have to question everything, and I know that's a lot. And so it's important to find a trustworthy guide in your journey, whoever that is. It may be a doctor or nurse, it might be a health coach, it might be a podcaster, it might be an interesting, informative article with facts based behind it that you can research yourself because you have to do the work. Um, if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. So my first step would be if you are faced with some sort of health decision or some life decision and you're getting something that doesn't seem right, then you should look at it and you should find someone. If you can't figure it out on your own, then find someone to help guide you along the way. Nurse advocates are amazing. Coaches are great. Like I feel like they're both underutilized, and people probably have some sort of, you know, image of a life coach, like, oh, a life coach, but like coaching really has its use if you have a good one that is educated and knows what they're doing. I think functional medicine, it should be the main medicine. So I think patients and clients who are faced with inflammation, I think finding someone who is skilled in that area, and like in your area as well with nutrition, that was your start. That is really important to explore with someone who has that knowledge. And then getting up and moving and getting outside, like I know we're all busy, but it's so important to get fresh air and sunlight and get some sort of movement. And even if you are, disabled or obese or elderly and you have difficulty moving, like my father, just like taking the time in the day just to do like hand weights or whatever you can do just to get the movement and try to build up strength. But also you have to take in the right nutrients. So, when it always comes back to the same thing for me, questioning a plan, making sure it seems like it's logical, prioritizing health, promoting behaviors. Sleep would be number one. Nutrition and hydration are a number two together because they kind of go hand in hand. And movement and spirituality, mindfulness and finding the discipline in the day to do that. That's a lot. I know that's not really that's more than just a start, but it's a choice to make the life change. Do you want to stay in the state or do you really want to change yourself? Like that, I guess that's the first question. Like, are you serious about wanting to do something or are you accepting your current state of being? Because it's your choice, right? Like if you want to feel better. So, um, yeah, I think coaching and following health related information from reputable sources is a really good start. So like staying away from TV and like you got to really be careful about what you see on social media too. A lot of it's trash. Like you just need to, ask someone maybe for a few good references, and that's also tricky, of course, to navigate that stuff. But I mean, you just have to find some good sources to start with and then do your own investigative journey.
Yeah. Well, and I'm assuming too, in your book, you have your own protocols that you have within that to help people really noodle in and find what works best for them.
Yeah, the book has a workbook component. So the book is broken down into different sections, which basically address all the issues we've been talking about. And so the workbook, I'm just gonna pick it up here. It's this, and it's got like different, I'm just gonna open up a page. It's got like different activities in it, like here's a journaling activity. And they're just like step-by-step simple things to do just to help inspire people to take a small step. And like the first activity in the workbook is like basically a checklist, like where is your imbalance the worst, or do you have one? And so it'll say here, you need to focus on this part in the book. So it'll say, go to, the nutrition chapter to find out about how to eat healthier. There's an activity in the workbook about looking at what's in your house, like looking at your pantry and your refrigerator. Like that's small stuff and figuring out what needs to go and how to shop. And there's actually a QR code for a link for healthy recipes in there. There's movement in the workbook. So there's a link to just like basic yoga poses, basic strength training poses, and you can open up that section of the workbook and you scan a QR code and it takes you to a video that shows you how to do those movements. There's actually some basic mindfulness activities in there. I have two sound sessions and a yoga nidra in the workbook that you can scan and go to on a video channel. So, it is, I think it's more effective to have the book and the workbook. I know some people are like, "Oh, I don't want to do a stupid workbook," but like it's cute, it's fun. It's like remember I don't know how old you are, but I'm 50. So when I was in elementary school, we had workbooks. And I used
Oh
to
yeah.
love, okay, so it's like one of
Yeah,
those.
I'm 47, so yeah, we're
I used to love like whatever class that was that had all the workbooks and do your little things,
yeah.
perforated pages. Like I want to do perforated pages, like literally like an old workbook, so you could tear them out and whatever, put them on your refrigerator. But like it's literally trying to make it a game so people can have some fun with it. Because yes, the book is stern and it's like quit being lazy and do your stuff, but it's also I try to be playful and kind of make the activities somewhat stimulating and challenging. There's even the last activity in the workbook is a journaling inspiration, like a bingo. So it like gives you like topics to write about in a journal. Because like journaling is great. Like I love it. I do it every day before I go to bed usually and just do a brain dump and talk about whatever's in my day. But like just doing stuff like that is just a start. It's a mindful activity. So, and it's also plasticity. It helps build the new nerve connections in the brain to help revalidate depression, PTSD, and any other types of imbalances, Alzheimer's. It's great for kids who have ADHD if they can sit down long enough to work on doing that, as long as they address their diet first. And you know what I mean? Like, so that those are some simple things when you read the book that you'll encounter. So, I mean, of course, I wrote it and I would love for everyone to buy the book and the workbook, but I do highly recommend that you buy the workbook to go with the book to have a little fun and trying to change your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, where can everybody find the book? Where can people find you? Where can they get into your world more and just learn more about you and this paddle boarding competition that you're going to be in?
Yeah,
Yeah. Let's,
I,
yeah. Let's talk about where you're hanging out and what's going on.
So the book can be found at gethealthiergetdead.com. I also have a Substack with the same name, but if you go to that website, you can basically find both. My coaching business is KristinaMorros.com. They're all linked together, so you'll find one if you go to the other. And as far as the paddleboarding goes, well, it's like my thing. I just love it so much. So people aren't aware of this, and I would love for people to become aware of paddleboarding because it's a great movement sport. And you don't have to compete. You can just go out and chill and paddle in any body of water, river, lake, creek, bay, ocean, whatever. And just like you take a moment just to be grateful of your surroundings and, feel the air and the water and see the nature around you, the trees and the flowers and the creatures. And but what I do mostly is I compete in races. So this past year, I kind of surprised myself. I went to the World Championship, which was in Sarasota, Florida, with like just not even really knowing what was going on. I purposely did not research anything. So I knew some of my friends from the Netherlands were going, so I was excited about seeing them. I was excited about meeting people from other countries that were elite paddlers and just kind of hanging out and being in the moment. But I ended up qualifying in every single event. I had, you know what I did? I packed my guns with me to go to the shooting range. So when I was done, when I got kicked off, like I'd have a couple of days free. So I was going to go shoot guns and practice that and just like go see Sarasota and do whatever. But I kept qualifying. So I got into the semifinals and the quarter semifinals and all that stuff. I'm ranked in all activities. I'm in the top 20 in my age group in the world until next year when the next person takes my place. But we competed in a 100-meter sprint, 800-meter technical, 5K and a 10K, and I placed like under the top 20 in all those events. So I was pretty proud of that. Kind of blew myself away. But it was great though. Besides all that, the thing that was the most fun about that experience was community. Like I made new friends from all over the place, from Sweden and Copenhagen and Canada, and met more people from the Netherlands and other places. And the thing about that sport, it's a shame because a lot of people don't even know that there are paddleboard races, but and it's existed for 10 years. It just kind of fell away, I believe, because they didn't really do the marketing appropriately to the sport and it didn't get qualified in the Olympics, which it should be an Olympic sport. The people who compete are excellent athletes. But there are races all over the world, all over the United States, all over the world, all year round. And even in my local community, we like tonight, I have my weekly paddle race. It's like less than a mile. It's just a bunch of us to get together. We do a course, and it's not for anything. It's for points, but it's more just to hang out and have fun and just like practice and train for real races. But you have that sense of community and connection with people, and that's the important thing. Whether you're doing a team sport or an individual sport, it's a great way to get to move. And I just want people to be aware that it is actually an option for movement. So in my practice, my movement component of coaching is actually paddleboard training. So I am a certified paddleboard teacher. I also do sup yoga. I'm a certified yoga teacher as well. But I love to like expose people to the sport and teach people technique. And when you learn how to do it correctly, it's a really good workout. It's a full body workout, like core, arms, legs, everything. It's a good mindful workout, especially if you're doing endurance paddling. Like you have to make a choice to keep going or stop and turn around. So, but yeah, I'm doing this one race in December called Last Paddler Standing. It is a 48-hour race, nonstop, 49
My
laps.
gosh.
Every lap is 3.3 miles to the last one. You have to make the lap in under an hour. So I've been training for that. I don't know how far I'm going to get, but I also don't really care. I'm just going to show up and do it and have fun. We'll see what happens. A lot of my friends are paddling Chattajack in Tennessee. It's a 32-mile race. I did that already once, but if you do that race 5 times, you get a cowboy belt buckle, which I want that. But that signing up for that thing is such a drama. You have to be up at midnight and right online, and they have limited like whatever, sign up. I don't feel like dealing with all that drama. So I just did Last Paddler Standing this year because you just sign up and you're done with it. And I'm doing some other minor races in Florida coming up in the next few weeks. Um, but yeah, it's super fun. So and I have to mention the brand board that I just bought. It's amazing. It looks like the American flag. It's a brand out of Stuart, Florida called Flying Fish Board Company. John is an amazing board shaper and he really cares about his boards and his business, and they are extremely incredible pieces of equipment. So I think everyone should own one. They placed like in the top of all the races they're in. There's always a flying fish board and at the top. So I have a custom board that John made for me, and I really love it. He also makes regular boards. So if anyone's interested in getting a really great paddle board, they should check out flyingfishboardco.com and have a little convo with my friend John and check out that. So yeah, I could talk about paddleboarding for forever.
Well, and all of those links will be down in the show notes so that you can get in touch with Kristina. You can grab a paddleboard if that is on your radar as well. Kristina, as we finish up today, are there any last words that you want to lay on the hearts of the listeners?
Yeah, just don't lose faith in your health journey. And we all have setbacks. So don't self-loathe yourself if you have a moment of defeat. I mean, I have them too. Being in growth mindset is the way to win. And so find something new to learn every day and you know, buy my book and read and learn how you can, find some pretty simple, inexpensive ways to get your life in order.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and your passion and really just taking that rebellious side of that rebellion that is coming forward and using it to make a movement.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you allowing me to speak today.